Hey everybody, it's Book of Katherine, and I don't have that much time to film. It's very, very short. So I'm going to try and answer this very quickly. Should we concede? Well, number one, I don't think any concessions should be made unless someone lost the election. The answer to that lies with who the American people voted in. I don't think anyone should concede unless the American people didn't vote them in. And I think that if you got to ask yourself the question, if someone is saying, well, I think we should concede, ask them, do you think that's because the American people didn't vote them in? And if they're saying it for anything other than, I don't think the American people voted them in, if they're like, and you're like, so you do think the American people voted them in? And they're like, well, no, I do. I think the American people voted them in, but then that's what you got to know. Because from what I'm hearing, if it's correct, people are saying, well, I know the American people voted A, but I want to concede to side B because side B is scaring me. And that's bullying, my friend. That is exactly what they're aiming for. Like they bullied the OONI and then the GSI. And neither OONI or the GSI has said, like GSI has said, we're picking a winner. That hasn't worked. So they've gone all the way to having the Pope calling to congratulate. They had the Ukraine call. The Benjamin Netanyahu has gone and been like, oh, it's been so nice working with you, Trump. They have really thrown in all the, like, it hasn't just been, the Democratic Party had printed up things that said president-elect. That didn't work. The people are just like, a lot of people, you have to understand that this is what I see. Like, just the way that happened with Hillary Clinton. There's what you think the voter tie was, and then there's what the voter tie was with what, if you minus all the actual fraud. Like, in my opinion, last time they say that Trump won by this narrow margin. Afterwards, with all that I learned about the election fraud and all that I saw with all the ballots, they had to wipe all the videos later, but I got to the videos right before, like, I was very lucky. I think I missed it by a month. I'm not even kidding. I got this whole slew. I got to look into it like by a month because I got in after the election, unfortunately. But luckily I got to see all these videos and also the Project Veritas and everything like that. And I was like, if even, and also live tweeting, there was an actual Twitter feed running that was like, send us your live tweets as you're there. When you see election fraud, send it to us and we will retweet it on our site. The Democrats sued and had that company prevented from ever posting its actual results. But I read the Twitter feed is still up. And I read what was happening in every state, in like every county, people who were seeing fraud. And I was like, if even 50% of all of this is true, coast to coast, then 40% of Hillary's votes were false, in my estimation. You know, I've never said that before because I don't want to sway people's minds or sway people's votes. The 2020 election's over. I've never ever said that to anyone but my insiders before. 40%, that was a sway, in my opinion. 40 frickin' percent. This time, I think the Democrats knew that with all their things. I think they stacked it even more, not just by those ballot chasers, but by way more. And I think there are preventative measures taken. But a lot of them were like shutting down. In all 50 states, the Democrats sued. Every single preventive, within that very first January, when the Trump administration took office, the Democrats had already sued in all 50 states, all voter ID measures, all voter ID ballots. This has been a 4-year battle for voter election fraud. So I'm sure, once again, 60% of the Democrat votes are false. But I also think that it's been 4 years of Donald Trump. Let me put it to you this way. I got to see the Reagan Library. I told you that right before I came out here because both Democrats and Republicans were telling me to see that. When I got to the Reagan Library, I found, I'm just figuring out, I'm like, oh, that's why. Or maybe I figured this out before and I don't remember. But I figured out why. I'm figuring out, again, maybe for the 15th time, figuring out why that is. Because when I got in there, it said, oh, the first time he won by so many votes, which was similar to what Trump won by. And then I learned later from David Hansen that he increased the economy by 7% by the second year, by like the 14th quarter or something like that, 14th quarter or some, I can't even get into it. It was like basically a year and 3/4 into the presidency. All of a sudden, boom, all of his things kicked into high gear and the economy went up by 7.14%, I think it was. And that was it. And then Reagan won it all. Everything but DC. I think he won everything but DC in one state. What did Trump do? Trump, 14%. 14%. Not to mention prison reform, not to mention lowering drug prices, not to mention 91% VA approval, not to mention, you think COVID can beat that out? You think people didn't figure out COVID was part of it, And if you think by any stretch of the imagination that it's going to get better by people, who put COVID into, if you think that they did COVID and it'll get better, are you crazy? It will be the people who did Mueller. You're like, let's do the people who did Mueller a coup with Mueller. Let's put them in charge of our government. Let's people did but Obama on steroids in charge of our government. You're basically like, we know that they want to do socialism and food stamps and destroy the Constitution. Let's just put them in charge of our government because they're having a tantrum. Let me remind you that even the Nazis burned down businesses to get their way, and you'll find the Time magazine articles that said Nazi Germany wouldn't have happened if when businesses were burned down, people didn't fight back. The Gulag Archipelago said we were nice people. Travesties would have been prevented if we had just fought back and had not been nice people. So whoever is out there saying we should concede in order to be nice people, well, guess what? History sure ain't on your side, is it? Peace out.